At 6 p.m., we'll call the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order on Thursday, May 18th. And Maricel, would you please do roll call?
Commissioner Vanderstar will not be here tonight, and neither will Commissioner Pro. Commissioner Capolongo?
Present.
Vice Chair Adam?
Present.
Chairman Frost?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Wow. We've changed our protocol recently to do the call to the public as the top of the order. So let me read this. Call to the public for public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Individual commission members may respond to criticisms made, may ask staff to review a matter raised, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the commission shall not discuss or take action on any matter during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. And with that, is there any members of the public that would like to address the commission this evening? Seeing no one, we will move on to agenda item number 5. Discussion, approval, and disapproval of the minutes from the regular meeting conducted on April 6th, 2023. And for the commission's information, I passed on several comments to Maricela relating to just basically typos and things of that nature. No material change in the minutes or meaning of the minutes, just some typos and some grammatical things.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Go
I
ahead.
had some changes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I had emailed these to Mari earlier today, and what I was proposing is, this was on my printed minutes, page 6, and it's where Ms. Garza is speaking, and she said, "No, that model isn't just giving you the data of how many cars there are. If I were to give you the level of service, it's like a grading system of A to F, and you're going to see a lot of red on that map." And then it goes down a couple of sentences, and then she says, "So we really dove in, pulled the P and Z data of the number of homes that could potentially be built, and updated the model to what the real picture should look like." So it was the word P and Z that was not there.
I made those changes to the minutes as well. So thank you.
Okay, so those have been incorporated?
Sorry.
She said those have been incorporated now?
Okay. Go ahead, Fred.
I'll re-enter my motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Capolongo and a second by Vice Chair Adam. All in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Thank you. New business. 6A, presentation approval with, sorry.
It disappeared when I went to point it out to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we're playing with technology up here and trying to figure it out.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 6A, presentation approval with conditions or denial of a reapproval for the Walker Butte 300 preliminary plat by Iron Line Partners. This property is north and west of Merrill Ranch Parkway and Hunt Highway. So Maricela, staff presentation, please.
This request was made by Ironline Partners, the applicant working to do this preliminary plat. They're asking for a reapproval of this preliminary plat. It's only for Walker Butte 300, or that portion of the overall Walker Butte PUD. It is within a planned unit development zoning or a master plan community. And here's a visual. There's Hunt Highway to the east, and then it is just to the west of where Mail Ranch Parkway ends and stops at the state land. Here's just an overall look at the Walker Butte itself as a master plan community. This is only the piece that's highlighted around by the red. This is the preliminary plat that shows all of the lots that they would include. The lot dimensions, they're looking at minimum lot widths of 45 feet and minimum lot depths of 100 feet. But the lot sizes range between 5,300 square feet and 6,600 square feet. The plat shows the two main dimensions being 55 by 120 and 45 by 120. There are other lots that vary in size in between. The density for single-family housing within the PUD is set between 1.0 and 4.5 dwelling units per acre. And overall, this Walker Butte 300 plat shows 299 acres of gross area. So there's 8 parcels within this entire preliminary plat, and each unit is listed within the box. You have 70 and 1, 88 and 2, 139 and 3, 153 in number 4, 89 in parcel 5, 113 and 6, 124 and 7, and 145 and 8. This piece was taken from the PUD itself. The PUD is from 2005, so it is older, and standards are definitely not up to par to what we would ask for today. However, within it, it does show that the density for these single-family lots will range from 1 to 4.5 units per acre. And for within single-family cluster housing areas, they're looking at a density of 8 dwelling units per acre. Some of these do kind of fall within a cluster area, but it still calls for single-family housing. And it also says that some parcels' densities may be required to be moved or transferred to different parcels in order to fit some needs, but overall there is a gross acreage that single-family residential is set to in the proposed land use, and this does not go over that 1,287 gross acres that it's limited at. Overall, there will be a total of 121 lots within this preliminary plat, and they meet the necessary 15% open space. They have the minimum setbacks, and the lot dimensions meet the required minimums or more within the PUD. The overall net density is 3.78. The gross density sits at 3.08 dwelling units per acre. This is all well within the 4.5 dwelling units per acre. I did make that one mistake that you corrected me on the email, that I put the 60, and that's for a local collector. The local roads itself was smaller. And I think I just mixed those two up because they had local in front of them. But the town engineer had reviewed the TIA and approved the street widths, design, and layouts when the preliminary plat came through. Overall, there will be approximately 111.92 acres of open space within this preliminary plat. Now, in the last approval of this preliminary plat, there were comments made about drainage. There were some questions about how they would go about dealing with the railroad, and as well as the flood, how the floodplain would be dealt with around the railroad. And if there were other questions, we do have a representative here for Ironline, if you have any further questions. All of these same stipulations are still attached to this preliminary plat as before, as well as the recommendation to make the preliminary plat read a little bit better when you go through each of the pages. Overall, the Planning and Zoning Commission may move to approve with the listed conditions or deny the preliminary plat reapproval for Walker Butte. that reapproval will be good for 1 year. The reason this came back is that 1-year approval did expire in April. However, their final plat was sitting for approval for water with EPCOR in the last months of last year, and they didn't realize that they had not turned in the final plat to the town. So when they finally brought it to the town, the approval for the preliminary plat had already expired. But by then, EPCOR was like, oh, we have water, but they no longer had an approved preliminary plat. So now they're trying to move forward to get this preliminary plat to EPCOR. Not preliminary plat, the final plat to EPCOR, but they need this reapproval first. That is the reason for the request.
Monticello, if you could, please, if you have the concerns that we had, any verbiage on those, would you mind sharing with us what those are, just to kind of refresh us?
Like all of the questions you had?
Or just, you brought up four main areas: drainage, floodplain.
Yes, so I have the minutes here. So on page 4, the staff report, you had asked the commission to see the open space and amenity plans in the future. On sheet 3, the plat drawings show a FEMA floodplain in the lower corner of parcel 3. And there was concerns because the county flood map showed a culvert in the southwestern corner. And you pass out a map at that time, which Iron Line still has, that shows that flood area. The map overlay shows 2 flood areas or arms on sheet 3 on the upper part of that area, and you had circled it. And on sheet 4, the floodplain extended into the plat, and the proposed preliminary plat did not reflect that. You also pointed out that water comes beneath the Union Pacific Railroad tracks at several locations, and you had the green dots show that within the handout you had. Page 4 of the concern difficult. And then there was concerns about police surveillance in areas where there might be right-of-way or where the railroad was. And I believe that was about, and then there was also a question about crossing the Union Pacific Railroad when it time to get to the other side.
Okay. Does the applicant, would the applicant like to address the commission this evening?
Good evening, Chairman Frost, members of the commission. For your record, my name is Bob Carver. I would like to correct my address as 1841 East Washington Street in Phoenix. I don't know that I necessarily have anything to add, but certainly can answer any questions. The issues that I recall and that Maricela mentioned, the railroad crossing, which was important to certain members of the commission. I apologize, I don't remember who they were at the time. But obviously the railroad prefers to restrict the number of crossings at the railroad. So the master plan community of which our parcels are a part contemplate a single crossing which would allow access to those parts of the PUD west of the railroad. Our properties are east of the railroad, so we don't have any need to deal with that crossing issue at this time. I can tell you that we are parties to a joint development agreement amongst the various property owners that are part of the overall PUD, and pursuant to that development agreement, we have an obligation to participate in both seeking approval of the crossing and paying for the crossing. So if and when it's required to get to the properties west of the railroad track, we will in fact participate in that solution. I also recall there being discussion about drainage as it comes from the west to the east. And again, as part of our joint development agreement, there are obligations among the property owners that are owners within the Walker Butte property to both handle on an interim basis drainage as it intersects with the rail crossing, or the rail line, and then also for permanent collect and conveyance requirements and some metering kind of engineering solutions as the overall area develops. I don't recall, Marcel, you maybe mentioned a couple of other issues. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Those are the two issues that I remember being significant to this commission back a year or two ago when we were first here.
Commission members? And I guess the heads up was given about the railroad just because it takes about an 18-month to 2-year process to get that to happen. And in a presentation that we heard 2 weeks ago by an assistant county engineer, they were basically explaining to us that for every crossing that is proposed, the railroad now wants you to give up 2 or 3 others. So just a forewarning to get started on that one.
Understood. Thank you.
And then some of the drainage things that I noticed is you have water coming into the north, from the north into parcel 1, parcel 2, both from the north and from the east. And it almost looks like that there is an effort there to deal with that. But when I look up the tracks that are designated there, tracks DD, X, Y, and Z, they're just listed as landscape and open space. But it looks like they're positioned such that they're set up to bring drainage in that's coming from offsite and into the project. So I'm wondering if those might be mislabeled or misconstrued.
I'm sorry, would you mention, I see track D and you mentioned,
This is on sheet 3 of the plans.
okay.
When I look at aerial photos and look at the drainage that's there, it looks like there's drainage coming in from the north, somewhere around lot number 27, which is on the north edge, and I notice that right adjacent to that is tract DD.
Correct.
And then also there's some coming in almost right at the northeast corner, but then you see this string of tracks that looks like they go down and kind of connect into your retention basin system, X, Y, and Z. But they're just listed as landscape and open space, nothing to do with drainage. So
Chairman Frost, I'm not sure if those, for purposes of the preliminary plat, if those tracks are indeed mislabeled. What I would say is that those collect and convey requirements would be satisfied as part of the final platting and obviously approved by the town's engineering department.
Okay, yeah. And then Maricel brought it up, and I think you touched on it a little bit, that between what you project as Merrill Ranch Parkway going over to hit the railroad tracks and the southern end of your development, there are 4 culverts coming into the railroad sized from 30 to 36 inches that bring water into there. And I see along the eastern side of Franklin Road that there are retention basins and whatnot, but just hope that someone is taking a look at that, because I think that that water would want to be safely conveyed on to its eventual home in the Gila River. But it's just not apparent here that that is being addressed and taken care of. And then one other comment. You have a fairly sizable easement running north-south through the property that is there for, looks like a gas pipeline easement and access roads. What will be the nature of that when all is said and done, and is this part of your open space calculation? You can see it particularly on sheet 3, it's probably where it's the most apparent. And what you intend to do?
I do see that easement. It would be a combination. Looks like some of it is under the roadway at a point in time, and some of it would in fact be included in open space calculations, yes.
And since it is part of your open space and a benefit for the area, what will be the treatment of that so that it's an amenity instead of just a scar?
Again, not having advanced the final engineering on some of these issues, I can't answer with specificity as to this easement. I do know that from prior experience that the gas company is reluctant to allow plantings of trees, and in other words, it allows for shrubs and those kinds of things, but not trees and the kinds of landscaping that would have deeper roots that would potential to interfere with or impact the integrity of the gas line itself. And in terms of, so it would be landscape consistent with the overall landscaping theme and concept for the project.
Maybe a pathway of some sort, maybe if even just DG, just to give us some connectivity north-south through there would be awesome as well.
We can certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else in here? And I noticed in the far southwestern corner of this area, there is a bright blue area that on the concept plan is designated as public facilities. I don't see that on the preliminary plat information, but just would you like to talk to that? I know this is a concept plan and it'll be put someplace else, but what is the definition of public facility in the context of this development? And that's the last sheet in my packet, the colorized version of, yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I have black and white, so
Oh,
I don't have colors.
That's the one I think labeled NN.
And yes, public facilities. Without the benefit of the original PUD document, I would have to go back and look at what that refers to. Again, to the extent that is a use that we need to account for as we work through our final plat process, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. And then the last thing, and Maricel brought this up, is there aren't any notes in your general notes on your plat about the flood zone that appears on sheet 3 and elsewhere. And usually you want folks to know when they're buying a lot that's impacted by that's happening just in case. So typically when I see plats, I see if those lots are impacted, like on sheet 3, when you see the back sides of 60, 17, 18, 19, or 14, 15, 16, 17, and 12 and 13, typically those are going to be listed in your notes so that there's no misinformation out there, that people don't have to read the plat. They can see it in the notes that they're there and something is being done, whether it's a letter of map revision by Phil or other things to deal with that floodplain.
Right. I would understand that we would intend to file for a letter of map revision to, and as part of our grading of the site, to remove those properties from any flood impacts.
So if you'll please note that on the title page of your plat, that would be awesome. So there's no confusion anywhere.
We will, thank you.
And then the last thing is just a note to go on with the standard staff recommendations would be if you're going to put any turf in, have it to be usable and playable, no monument turf.
We don't have any objection to that note.
Awesome. With that, we appreciate you coming and talking to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Ready for a motion?
Ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
With
with stipulations.
Okay.
Yes. I second, sorry.
I have a motion by Commissioner Capolongo and a second by Vice Chair Adam for approval with stipulations. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, on to 6B. And maybe before I hit that, Maricela, we noted in with the technology thing that we were doing up here, and we can push this to later, but just wanted to give our technology folks a heads up. We did have someone raise their hand in the course of the public comment period, and we managed to miss it. So I don't know how we take public comment from someone watching on the internet, if they type something in and we read it, or what that happens. But I just wanted to give you a heads up now, so maybe our technology team can work on it, and then we can open up the public comment again later on in the agenda, maybe right before, right after this new business happens.
Okay. We could probably, yeah.
Okay, so we can move on now to 6B, presentation approval with conditions or denial of a 6-month approval extension for the Vista Grande, a Walker Butte preliminary plat by Iron Line Partners. This includes APNs 200-28-001A and 200-28-001B, and they are located west of Hunt Highway and south of Mirage at Magic Ranch. Maricela, staff presentation, please.
So the preliminary plat for Vista Grande was requested a 6-month approval extension by Iron Line Partners. That approval occurred on June 2nd of 2022. And the approval has not finished its course yet, but they want to get a jump on that before it does end so they can immediately move on to the final plat. It was the same situation as the last preliminary plat. They put this one along with the other one in for water to EPCOR. They couldn't service it at the time, but now they can service it. So they're looking to move forward with the final plat. This is only for Vista Grande, which is further north than the area we're looking at. It is still to the west of Hunt Highway, and it is also still within that same planned unit development, Walker Butte PUD. So this is an overall look at what is around it, as well as the roadways that come close. So here you have Hunt Highway. Franklin is just to the south, and then you have Walker Granite Road coming along on the west side. This is the overall look. And to the north, you have Mirage at Magic Ranch, the railroad, and then Arizona Trust Land on the other side. So overall look at the PUD again. So it's the same minimum lot widths that we saw in the previous preliminary plat. The lot ranges are different between 5,227 square feet and 13,068 square feet. And the lot dimensions are 55 by 120 and 45 by 120. But they also vary in between. The density is still 1 to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. However, the difference with Vista Grande is that this is 154.17 acres of gross area. So it is a lot less than the previous preliminary plat we saw. There's only 6 parcels in this subdivision, 101 in the first parcel, 115 in the second, 88 in the third, 121 in the fourth, 93 in the fifth, and 87 in the sixth. Now, it's the same proposed land uses and the same densities that was found in the previous one, since they are all part of the same Walker Butte 300 PUD. The total amount of lots that you will see in Vista Grande is 605 lots. And this also meets the necessary 15% open space, as this one came with landscape plans, unlike the other one. And the overall density is 3.92 dwelling units per acre, which is beneath the 4.5 dwelling units per acre. The town engineer reviewed the TIA and approved each street width, design, and layout, and there will be approximately 31.31 acres of open space. Staff found that the preliminary plat, before I get to that though, I will read through some of the comments that were brought to the commission in the previous approval. Let's see here. That was preliminary plat. So on page 3 and 5, you discuss the transition between the 3 southbound lanes down on Walker Granite Road, as well as you think we had landscape plans this time around. You did ask that all turf be playable and non-aesthetic, and that turf for the monument sign be taken out. You were concerned about the 30-foot local street, which included the right-of-way curb and gutter. And you also asked about the areas with slopes over 4% and the lots that have a 5-foot drop across them. And on page 4, the upper right, we discussed a 20-foot emergency access easement. If I go back. So that access easement would be along this edge. And you asked for it to be maintained for secondary access in case anything to happen to Walker Granite. And it is currently, it does have some improvements currently that were done by the county. You also passed out an aerial photo that showed a 100-year flood with 200 cubic feet per second of water flowing through certain areas. And the water does come across Walker Granite, and you notice that water did come across lots 442 and through 450. And to take into account those flows. And I believe that those were all the main comments that were discussed. And we have representatives here for any of those questions to go through.
Great. And you said that we do have representatives here?
The same one.
Oh,
Mr. Carver will be speaking again.
I apologize. Again, for your record, my name is Bob Carver. My address is 1841 East Washington Street. So this is another piece of the overall Walker Butte Master Plan. It's the northernmost part of it. Again, as discussed with the 320 that we just spoke of, I know that there are some issues related to grading, and there are some issues related to floodplain or floodway impacts. And again, I guess my response to that is those are issues that we fully intend to work out as we work through our final engineering, final plat.
thank you, commission members. Any comments, concerns, questions? Just a couple. I noted that it looks like that Walker Granite is probably going to be considered a minor collector. Is that correct?
I would need to, Chairman Frost, I would need to defer to staff on that question.
I just noticed that it has a 60-foot right-of-way, and the only street on here that has a 60-foot right-of-way is a minor collector. And the one concern there is in a minor collector, there's no turn lane. But with the amount of traffic that's going to be coming down through here as this connects further to the development to the south, I'm wondering if this would probably, in light of all that traffic, deserve a major collector, particularly as you approach Hunt Highway, where you're going to need turn lanes, et cetera. Major collectors typically going to have the turn lane down the middle of it, and this doesn't, which we've had a lot of concerns raised lately about traffic and movement of traffic, and this will be the major way out of this whole development to the north, not only this piece, but others to the south and to the west.
I apologize, Chairman Frost. I think, are you talking about the northernmost intersection there of Walker Granite Road and Hunt Highway?
It's Walker Granite Road itself.
Right.
On the detail, it's part of the plat, it's shown as I believe, a minor collector. And that seems to be, given what we're looking at here in the depth and the breadth of the traffic and other land that could feed into that, like all that state land to the west and land to the south, that a minor collector might not be sufficient. So I would appreciate if you would take a look at that, and staff, if you would look at that as well, just to see if that has the capacity that we need to move traffic through there.
Chairman Frost would be happy to take a look at it.
And then my only other comment is huge kudos to you for providing us with a landscape plan and amenities and trails that we can actually see how this is going to turn out into the future, so we know kind of what we're doing. This is awesome. This is what I hope that we can move toward, and this is a great example for those that follow you to bring to us. It's nice to see the amenities and how you've done the interconnectivity and the paths and other things like that that make this a workable, livable development and not just kind of a plat-looking thing. You know, it's kind of hard to discern what's going on. So this is huge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that,
So I'll make a motion to approve a 6-month approval extension for Vista Grande at Walker Butte preliminary plat, PZ-22-26, with the stipulations as stated.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Adam and a second by Commissioner Capelongo for approval with stipulations. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Maricela, are we good now to invite the person that would like to have made a comment to either speak to us or to have their comments read, however that is to be done?
Do you want to do it now, or do you,
Sorry.
do you want to do now? Okay,
Sure.
so let me,
So we are going to open call to the public again to try to receive comments from a person who was online.
can you hear us?
Hi, guys.
Oh, there she is.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, and please state your name for the record, and address.
Okay. Yeah, so this is Courtney Ramirez, and I'm from right here in downtown Florence. And I had my hand raised well before the meeting even started, so I'm not even sure how that was overlooked. That happened last time at a council meeting, so whoever's running technology, I'd really like you guys to be diligent on making sure the public is seen and heard during public comment section. That would be wonderful to give us the opportunity. So thank you for the time. And I wanted to bring a couple of things to light, especially with these two items on the agenda tonight. With so many people, with all the building happening around us and all this stuff in the works as these projects, and the El Dorado holdings and that piece that was recently approved a while back at Attaway and Hunt Highway. A lot of us people wonder, where are these people? Hunt Highway's a mess, Attaway's a mess. Our roads are so not adequate and safe, really, for even the people that we have now. And continuing to approve all this high-density housing sometimes just makes us wonder how this is safe for everybody on the roads. And so that's what I wanted to talk about, that. People need to be safe on the roads, and with thousands and thousands of houses coming in that area, it's just scary to see all this high-density coming. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is, not sure if it's been brought to you guys as the commission or not, but I've been very vocal over the last 10 months about policy with the Western Crossing subdivision, right smack across the street where we live, regarding dust and noise and all their track out debris, rocks, mud, things like that they are leaving all over the place. The dust is continuously coming into our neighborhood, right into our doors and windows when they're open, and into our yards, and that's unacceptable. So I've been in talks with our new town manager, and it seems like they're going to try to get everybody on the same page to maybe strengthen our policies to help keep everybody safe. Valley fever is very prominent. People actually can die from valley fever. Asthma is exacerbated with all this dust and everything. And to allow this subdivision next door to completely dust us out all the time, every single day, is not acceptable. So if you guys can maybe work on maybe adding that to the agenda, get everybody involved possibly, and work and brainstorm at how you guys can help protect the surrounding people with the dust and the trash and the big rocks that are being left on the road and things like that. Looking at, every time we talk about these zoning ordinances, it's to protect the health and safety and welfare of the people. And that should always be the highest priority with planning and zoning and our staff and our council, to ensure that happens. So I would just kindly ask to maybe expedite that. Even last night, we had At 8 p.m., a huge big rig roared through the neighborhood, kept their engine idling for 45 minutes as they were loading heavy equipment, and then came back at 10:30 p.m. last night and stayed till about 11 p.m. loading equipment, making noise with chains and things like that. And how is that acceptable? And if there's noise ordinances, and if they're not, does stuff like that need to be specified? I don't know, but just tonight, there was a gentleman that pulled up. 6 p.m. is the cutoff this time of year for noise. And gentleman pulled up just before 6 o'clock and left just about 10 minutes ago, making noise and causing dust in the neighborhood. So even, on the weekends and off hours, this builder, it's D.R. Horton, there's nobody that's controlling the dust in the off hours and on the weekends when our weather gets really bad and the winds blow like crazy. Their dirt and trash and debris is blowing everywhere. So I would love for everybody to get together and strengthen up these policies to help keep those of us around that area protected with our health and our vehicles and so forth.
Ms. Ramirez, could you wrap up real quickly?
Yep, nope, I'm done. So
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you for your time.
No, thanks. Apologies for not getting you in during the normal time, but thanks for your patience and hanging around for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 7, presentations and information only. Item A, future agenda items or updates. Maricela?
We will have a meeting on June 1st. There will be a temporary use permit. Oh, Lord. There'll be a temporary use permit for a model homes in Western Crossings. We also just received a design review for a Starbucks within the Anthem Marketplace, the northernmost parcel that's left. We also have another preliminary plat for the northwest corner of Hunt Highway and Mail Ranch Parkway. They're looking to finally lot those into parcels for future commercial uses. So that will also be coming forward in the future. Is that pretty much it? Yeah, those are the items coming up in future meetings.
Super. Are there any requests for agenda items from either of you? Okay. B is Florence Transportation Plan, and I noted that you sent some information to us. Harvey, it looks like you're going to take this one.
Yeah, let me pull up your thing. There you go.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioner Capilano. At the, I think the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, I believe the Vice Mayor had indicated, had mentioned, the Vice Chair had mentioned that the 2020 Florence Transportation Planning Study that was done, and there seemed to be some interest in what that study said, what it does, what it doesn't do. And so I thought I would try to provide an overview of the study, what its purpose is, what's the genesis for it, and how we use it in our community planning as well as our transportation planning. So just a little bit of background. Of course, this predates me. The previous I believe it was under the previous manager, there were grants that are typically offered by the Arizona Department of Transportation, ADOT, small cities grants for planning, transportation planning studies. And so the town of Florence must have approached ADOT, obtained this monies for this study, and this is a project that was sponsored and funded by ADOT. I'm not sure how much the town of Florence had a local match, if they didn't have a local match, but the sponsor was ADOT. They controlled the study. They hired the consultant, who was Baker International, who is the same consultant that the town of Florence used to do the last general plan update, as the commission's probably aware. So the study, the reason, my understanding of why it was done and what some of the emphasis for it was that the previous study was a 2008 study called the Coolidge-Florence Regional Transportation Plan. So for those that have been in Arizona for in the mid 2000, from about 2003 to about 2007, 6, 7, there was a tremendous amount of growth going on in Arizona, and primarily in the metro Phoenix area, Florence, and in Pinell County, and developers were coming down and entitling property like there was no tomorrow, and approving PADs, or PUDs in Florence's case, planned unit developments. And in fact, I believe there's probably about 37 planned unit developments that encompass about 27,000 acres within the town of Florence, which is a lot. And so the manager at the time, or the staff, the administration, decided that, in 2020, nothing really happened. A lot of these PUDs have sat on the shelf and nothing has happened except, of course, north of Merrill Ranch. Now we're finally getting some more activity. Just recently, we've seen more and more activity, but there was a lull there where nothing was happening. So the thought being was, we really need to revisit our growth projections and redo our transportation plan, because it didn't line up with what the growth projections were. So that was the reason I think that was the primary reason for doing the study, is my understanding. And so what it also did was it looked at each of these existing development agreements, it updated our growth projections, development patterns, and amended primarily our functional classification. And what is a functional classification? Well, we talked about just a minute ago. I mean, the chairman mentioned the minor collector. There's a minor collector, major collector, minor arterial, principal arterial. There's freeways. So this is a classification system that specifies the right-of-way width, the right-of-way requirements, the design, the speed, design speed, the number of lanes, actually the thickness of the asphalt and how much aggregate you have, because you want to have a road that's designed to meet the anticipated traffic. So the purpose was to update that to meet the reduced growth projections in 2020. Whether that was good or bad, I'm just relaying what I think why we did it. And it also developed a typical cross-section for each of these classifications. There were several other things that the plan did. It identified and recommended short, medium, and long-term plan for improvements to several of the roads in Florence, as well as intersections. And they classified I think Chairman or Vice Chair mentioned level of service. You'll see LOS, that means level of service. So as the Vice Chair mentioned, you grade streets and roads on A to F, and A, just like school, A is the best, F is failing. So you have to, what the purpose of that is you want to have at least D or better on your roads. And so what they did was they used a model, growth projection model, and applied it for 2040. So they used a no-build scenario, and they used a build scenario, a 2040 build scenario, with reduced growth projections to determine what the level of service most of the major roads in Florence would be in 2040 with a no build and with a build scenario. And then they reduced the classification for the roads accordingly. So in other words, a road may have been a major collector, 4 lanes, and then they redid it to a minor collector to 2 lanes based upon what the growth projections were. So that was what the study did. How do we use the study? Primarily, that's one of the major things. So those road classifications that were redone and reclassified in 2020 were actually incorporated into our general plan that was approved by the voters last year. And I'll give you some examples of what the principal arterials are: 6-lane facilities along 1-mile grid system typically. And so SR 79, 287, Hunt Highway, Attaway Road, those are major or principal arterials. And you probably could guess that just by how much traffic they contain. So the projection should be those facilities ideally should be 6 lanes eventually when the growth projection occurs. Minor arterials, a 4-lane facility, and some examples of those are Merrill Ranch Parkway, Felix Road, and Old Florence Kelvin Highway. Then you have collector roads. So you have a major collector road, which is typically a 4-lane road. It could be 2 lanes without a median, or 2 lanes with a median, with a center lane, turn lane. And some of those are Diversion Dam Road, Main Street, Adamsville Road. Minor collectors, just a 2-lane road with no center lane and typically no median. Some examples of that would be Plant Road, Canal Road, Bowling Road. So those are in our general plan that was adopted. So the document went through one other thing. The document went through public process because ADOT funded it, public funds. So there was a technical advisory committee that was formed. I don't know if any of you were on whether usually a technical advisory has planning commission, it has some developers, may have the council on there, citizens, a collection of folks that will review the plan document and provide guidance to the consultant, Baker. It had, I believe, 2 workshops. I think 2 workshops, one at Florence Gardens, I believe, and then there was one, I believe, down here. I'm not sure there was one in Anthem, so at least 2. And then there was presentations before the Planning Commission and City Council back in 2020. So there's, what I've given you in your packet is an executive summary, and it lists some recommended roadway segments and some recommended intersection improvements. And how we use those are Public Works prepares, with input from different sources, a capital improvement program each year, and a capital improvement program for those that may be listening, that's a collection of all our projects by year, funding source, and usually it has a date and time, or a date and when we plan to initiate that, and whether it's going to be design only, construction. So that's a plan, a capital improvement plan. So some of those recommendations within the plan were incorporated in the CIP, it's my understanding. I talked about this, the model they used, the traffic demand model. They applied it to a 2040 no-build scenario. So let's assume that we don't have any growth. We're expected to operate at LOSD, the D level, or better, and the roads that need work, even if we don't have any growth, are Judd Road, Quail, Hunt Highway. Nobody would have guessed that. Hunt Highway needs work today, of course. Attaway and SR 79. I'm surprised that 287 wasn't in there, but which will operate at a level E or F. So assuming we don't do anything, they will get worse. So that's one thing the study pointed out for those. And so the primary outcome was to right-size our roadways, our functional classification system. I mentioned that 27,000 acres, that's about 78% of Florence's zoned properties are master plan communities. And over 25, it should be 37 is what the PUDs are, how many we've approved. That would include Merrill Ranch, of course. And the other thing that it pointed out was there's quite a few jobs that we have in Florence. There's 4,100 jobs within the town of Florence, and a lot of people commute in and out of town. And I think where the challenge that we have is a lot of those commuters, of course, use 287 and 79, and I can relate to that because I see the traffic, especially on 79 and 287. It's very congested. There's quite a bit of traffic at the peak hours and the off-peak, or the peak hours in the morning and in the evening. So we have twice as many employees leaving Florence to work elsewhere. So most people are leaving Florence to go to work, and then we have 4,100 jobs where people are coming into town to work. So that's where a lot of our transportation challenges are. Some of the other additional recommendations, it had a truck route plan. It lists what roads should be designated as trucks. It had recommendations on the north-south corridor, preferred alignment, which came to fruition, except for the tax failed, unfortunately. Pedestrian bicycle improvements, site visibility triangle design. It had public transportation turnout design for buses. It recommended that. And also, it had also a list at the appendix of different funding sources for roads. So it did a lot, and it's a study. It was a study, but it is actually a policy document. Now, I think the council was presented with this study. I don't know whether they actually accepted it or approved it. Whatever case they did, it's been endorsed by the town, and we use it. And it's a policy that guides our transportation planning. So that's sort of, hopefully I gave you a good overview of what the study does, maybe what it doesn't do, but I think it was a good effort. We needed to have that based on the 2008 study. So as the Vice Chair mentioned, it's still valid, we use it, and I'm open for any questions, so I hope
So I'd like to thank you for your patience and for reviewing this. It's very helpful. And I don't mean to question studies that have been in the past or how you use them. I think where I'm seeing a disconnect, and I find this very interesting, but at the end of the day, I'm not qualified to really make a decision. This is good background for me. I'd leave that to the experts. Where I see a disconnect is this was done in 2020. When I go through there, very much the intersections, the same places we're talking about today, Felix Road and Hunt Highway, we all know every place they're talking about. I don't see it in the CIP 21, 22. I know the council, the vice mayor is up to their eyeballs in budget right now. Mm-hmm. Once this is identified as a priority, and it was in 2020, and it's only gotten worse over the years, when does it make the budget to get fixed? And how does that happen? Because that's a public works responsibility. So my question is, as a commissioner, and we sit here and we're being asked to approve these PUDs and these communities, I don't have the assurance that that's being connected, and at some point, those traffic snarls are going to be addressed. I understand it's ADOT, it's county roads, it's a lot of things, it's a lot of money. But is there some sort of plan, and where are these major intersections on that plan? Mm-hmm. I guess, and that's, again, that's for you all to be managing, but I don't hear any discussion of that when these PUDs are coming before us. And I feel like we are shooting darts in the dark. I don't know how bad and which PUD is the one that's going to put us over the top where we're creating another Hunt Highway.
Well, yes, well, thank you. I can assure you, and you have the vice mayor here, and he can speak to it. The mayor and council are very much, transportation and roads are a major priority, especially Hunt Highway. And we had funding at one of the bills at the legislature just recently, and unfortunately that funding didn't get approved. But we are working on that. I mean, these things are in the works. It takes a long time to do some of these projects. I know a signal at Arizona Farms Road and Hunt Highways in the works. There's several projects in the works, and I could, at another time, I could go over
No. And again, my point is I don't want to delay projects. I don't want to say no to anything, but I guess we're looking for guidance from you, knowing what you know about the state of the roads and when it might even occur for financing reasons mostly. Are we meanwhile just chugging out the yes, go ahead?
Well, a couple of things. Let me talk in terms of new development, because that's the area that I'm primarily focused with. That's my mission. But obviously, the existing traffic contributes to it. The new growth will impact the community greatly. For instance, you brought up, I think Western Crossings was brought up. So we had that plat. You have to remember the plat was approved, the zoning was approved back in 2003. And then I think the first plat was approved in 2006. None of these issues came up at that time. I'm sure it probably was, everybody was really hungry for development and improving, most of the projects. And we're pretty lenient on requirements. So when it came forward, there was obviously concerns by the citizens as well as the Planning Commission that there was going to be congestion at Centennial Park intersection and Highway 287. So that was a requirement of the developer. They had to make improvements to that and rebuild and redo that intersection. And it is a requirement, and they will be doing it as part of, before we have people moving in to that development. So that will be done. And also Centennial Park Avenue, I believe, the developer, and well, then we're back to the ADOT. They have to get plans approved by ADOT and get permits from ADOT. Sometimes that will slow the aging process. Just about like the railroad, it takes a long time. So they're kind of dependent on that, but they are, they know they're required to do that, and they will be doing that. So, I attempted, when that first came up, I went to ADOT and said, I want to require the developer to expand 287, to do their frontage improvements. And I could not get ADOT to agree to support the town's position to require that widening of 287. They didn't want to widen 287 because they saw excess pavement for them to maintain and it won't be used, and the traffic right now doesn't require it. But my way of thinking is, when we have new development, we should stipulate when those requirements should be made, at what point. So when a new development comes in, Chris will require what is called a TIA, or traffic impact analysis. So that traffic impact analysis will take into account trip generation and how the roads should be designed and what the width of the roads are. And so at that point, we need to sit down with the developer and say, this is what we require at certain levels, at certain times during the sequence of growth. They usually don't like to do that because everything's driven by market. The market dictates when they can put the improvements in, so they resist that. So that's the challenge that we have as a town.
Of course, that makes sense. But the reality is, we heard from the county, we know that the state and the feds turned us down. This manna from heaven is not going to come to us for our roads, right? So it's going to be a combination of all of us, as we've always done business, plus the developers, are going to have to kick in. There's just no other money. I just wanted to say one other
Right.
thing that I saw in the report, and it has to do with some discussions we're having, and actually a stipulation, I believe, the chair made wisely on Western Crossings. And in the traffic study, it says,
Just be careful because this is just a presentation tonight.
I can't talk about it. Okay,
I get some water.
it has to do with the traffic study.
Okay, just
Okay, so one of the other items in the traffic study was the town shall update the zoning ordinance to institute a development standard that requires a path or trail connection between all existing and proposed neighborhoods.
Included that. Chairman, Vice Chair, we included that as a stipulation, and they know.
I'm on the traffic plan now. I know I can't go to that, but I guess my question is, I know you did include some of the other recommendations where concerned zoning when we did our general plan. I don't recall this being part of it.
The trail, I'm sorry, the trail connection is
Yes.
what you're asking me about? We address that. Go ahead.
Because the recommendation was that the town shall update a zoning ordinance, so I don't recall that that's there.
I'd have to look into it. I don't know off the top of my head if the general plan included that or if that, I know because I know that's part of the amendments we were looking to make. You had mentioned something like that, but I don't know off the top of my head if the general plan does. I'm pretty sure it does, but I just,
Okay.
It's,
we can agendize that. I'm sure Harvey didn't
Yeah.
think that this was going to be a one shot here tonight. We'll probably have a lot of questions. So for future agenda and future discussion, let me throw a couple of things out since we can't get too far off topic here. One is in a situation like this where you had a developer that was willing to pay for 287. In previous experience, we've had them bond for that and put that money into the town's coffers until it could be built and the money was there. So that can be a future agenda item, so that's been done. And the second one, I think that would help my colleague here, is to understand the triggers that take place that move a project out of the conceptual stage into the CIP, and to give us an idea what the time span of the CIP is. Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? And just to help us understand that would be great too in a future agenda. And then now that we have this study, are we contemplating using it to assess impacts on things like traffic signals and others that are not immediately adjacent, but as they're impacted in the mile grid or whatever, it's some distance away, because adding that volume to the roads not only impacts immediately, but at a distance as well. So anything along that line, I think would be appreciative as we kind of flesh this topic out a little bit more. Be good on a future agenda for the continue, part B or part two of your discussion here tonight.
all right.
Super, thank you very much. Okay, right-of-way maintenance, item C under 7.
are you sure? All right. All right, let me get it.
You guys gonna play rock, paper, scissors on that? Who,
He'll just have to help me on that one. It wasn't it. Let's go with that one. So remind me the overall question with the right-of-way maintenance, because the town of Florence does take care of our right-of-way maintenance. Certain areas, of course. When it comes to what's right in front of a parcel or commercial parcel, that is actually responsible of the landowner up to the curb, as we have in our property maintenance code. The owner and/or occupant of land shall maintain the land free of, grass, dust, weed, plant growth, infestation. In addition to the requirements above, the owner and/or occupant of land shall also maintain the following areas free of grass higher than 6 inches. So pretty much to the center line of the alleyway or to the back of curb in front of their property. That's those areas that need to be maintained by the property owner. The town of Florence does take care of the rest. we are short-staffed, so when we go around the town and do what we can, and then come back to the start, a lot of the times, like, people find the weeds and dust and trash are back. But that is something that the Public Works does take care of. Was there any other specific questions?
I guess a clarification, because you basically just covered every iota of land out there. If we're going to the back of curb as their responsibility, in the middle of alley, there's not
Or
much
back
left.
of, yeah, sorry, continue.
So there's not much left for the town to maintain if everybody's doing that.
There are places, like this morning you saw, or if you were driving through like the Y area, and of course we have our parks and our own facility buildings and other places that are not as well as ADOT. Those aren't our parts either. But a lot of it is just bringing it together to take care of. But a lot of it is town and property owner.
And in this situation, is the town actively patrolling areas and calling it to their attention, or are they waiting for someone to complain before action is taken?
It's more of a patrol, but when a complaint does come in, they tend to go there next, or immediately, depending on how bad the complaint is. If it's like weeds about to be burned, then
I know this has been a record year for weed emergence, so it's been tough. But I guess my concern with a lot of this is what the public's perception is as they come through our community, either on 79 or 287 and drive through here and see weeds. And I just don't want to leave that false impression with the traveling public as they come through Florence and they go, oh, wow, this place is weed infested.
right, and we also understand if some of our places aren't being taken care of, what's the incentive for certain property owners to also take care of their weeds as well, beyond basic code enforcement.
Well, and I'm just, I guess, thinking of a property in particular, and this is, and I don't know there's weeds there, but I'm just thinking of the residential home that sits at the northwest corner of Butte and 79. So I think the home would be considered facing Butte, but their side yard is 79. So by what you're saying, they're responsible for Butte right of way up to the back of curb and 79 right of way to the back of curb. And the maintenance of all those.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
This is, Mr. Chair, this is pretty a consistent policy. I've worked in several towns, and the town can't be expected, a city or town can't be expected to maintain all the right-of-way for all residential areas. Most people view that what's called a parkway or right-of-way in front of their house, from the back of curb to their property line. They treat it like it's their own and maintain it, and most people do. Most people don't even realize it's town right-of-way, but it is, and they're responsible for maintenance of it. And when they don't maintain it, then it becomes a code violation issue that we have to deal with. And typically in a master plan, one other thing, when a master plan community like Anthem, or the ones that I'm familiar with, the HOA takes care of things like that. This town doesn't take care of them. They police the weeds and the right-of-way and make sure that those are properly maintained.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you on in a normal residential area. But this example that I called out is kind of the extreme, where you're facing a minor arterial and a major arterial, and no one from that home is going to think that I'm going to go use that property because I don't see it as my property. So I'm wondering if some of those areas might fall within the jurisdiction of the town to take care of, because I would not consider that usable, because I'm not going to play there or be there or anything because there's traffic going by.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I've seen most towns where it's a collector road and maybe the lots back up to the collector road and you have right-of-way, and usually the town or the city would take care of that, where there's not a designated property owner for something like that. The general overall policy is if it's a corner lot, two local streets, a corner lot, they take care of both sides. But if it's on a collector, it's hit and miss. And even arterials on commercial, some towns require the commercial to take care of their right-of-way, and then some towns take care of it for them. It just depends on resources and philosophy.
And I agree with the commercial, because that's the window to their business. They want it to look good, so. Yeah, this is a struggle, and I've struggled with it elsewhere too, so it's,
Yeah.
so. Well, we would appreciate the update. Is that it, Maricela? And any other questions or, okay. On-street parking in Anthem.
Oh, boy. I know. So I talked to the town manager about what this discussed, because that doesn't really come into the planning and zoning part, but his response is, he's worked with the new fire marshal and then the interim fire chief for public safety purposes, and currently they don't have any different directions at this time. He's also discussed this item with the HOA, and it is currently not supported or enforced by the HOA. They can change the rule in the HOA, but to his understanding, this is not an active issue that's being pursued by the HOA at any high level at this time. And beyond that, there wasn't much else information I could get. So currently, on-street parking is still being allowed, at least on the Parkside section of Anthem. And I get the concern that Commissioner Capolongo had shared a while, but that's the answer I got.
Not much of an answer.
I know.
Yeah.
I know it's not the one you're probably looking for, but that's,
Just looking for some kind of direction on who needs to get chewed out, really. But thank you, because apparently it's, yeah, another headache. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, typically in a master plan community, the HOA takes on that responsibility. I'm on every HOA or every master plan community I've lived in, the one currently, which is actually in the county, and they enforce that rigorously, because I've gotten 2 letters on it and had to put in off-street, I spent several $1,000s having to improve pads on my lot because we had too many cars. So it's very common for the private HOAs to enforce that. The town can't really enforce parking on street overnight unless it's parked in front of a fire hydrant.
I wasn't looking for the town to enforce it. I was looking to see who needs a talking to.
Well,
You know what I mean? And yeah, well, the Anthem HOA is less than useless.
the manager approached the manager of the HOA to address this issue because of the complaints, and that's all I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, the Anthem's HOA is less than useless.
Yes.
Most HOAs are less than useless, but they are particularly
I think one of the things we could look at a policy. I know of a couple of communities that do this, but it's fraught with some issues. So for, looking forward rather than, we can't, from a town standpoint, we can't correct Anthem, we can't widen the streets, we can't limit parking on street. But like.
Actually, when I bought in Anthem, you weren't allowed to park on the street.
But they just chose not to enforce it.
Yeah, for whatever reason. And so be it. That's why it was,
One
you
concept.
can't get a fire, you could not get a fire engine down that street.
One concept is with new development, we'll require them to have a HOA, and we can require them, as part of that HOA, CCNRs, they can have overnight parking on the street. Some cities are a little more aggressive, a couple of them in the valley are a little more aggressive with this. I'm not necessarily recommending this, but because it has some side effects that are not good, is so if a developer wants to do 45-foot wide lots or 50-foot wide lots, the street gets wider. If they want to do 70 or 80-foot wide lots, the street can get narrower because you have less parking demand. The smaller the lots, the wider the street. But that goes against some of the things we're trying to do from an environmental standpoint, creates more asphalt. I think the most efficient thing is for HOAs to enforce that and manage that. And it seems to work in most places.
Yeah, apparently they can't figure that out over there.
And maybe to tag on what Maricela said, that the discussion was happening, that, the two plats that we looked at this evening, the two developments, we looked at several plats. One of those has 32-foot wide streets, and the other has 30-foot wide streets. And that is dangerous right there, because if we have people parked on both sides and a fire truck can't fight a fire there. So maybe we do need to be doing what you're talking about with certain street widths, that we have to limit parking just for the safety of the community and for the safety of our firefighters. So we'll throw that back into your hands.
I guess
So,
the
I'm sorry, but, so I guess you said that the fire marshal said there's really nothing they can do about it? Well, that doesn't make any
Yes.
sense at all. That doesn't make any sense at all.
The question I'd heard posed was, because people have, I guess, requested the police to come and enforce the no parking, but gosh forbid, if there is a fire or an emergency and they can't get through, is the town liable? Because I know it's not an easy, it's been going in circles, right? And again, as the chair said, as we're approving new planned communities, it's something we already know has become an issue. And so maybe if we can influence the developers that even to widen the streets, because people are going to park on the streets.
Okay. Thank you, good discussion. We need more of these. Call to the commission. Anything going up?
I have a thank you to Harvey and the team for Bisbee Ranch. It is one of the issues with the right-of-way, and it is looking light years better, so I really appreciate that. Back to the minutes, and the reason why I was zeroing in on what Celeste Garza had said from the County Planning Department is because the chart she gave us was just based on the flow of cars right now. It really wasn't a model, it didn't project anything, and she didn't have the recent P&Z data. So she said they went in and they updated that model. I was wondering if you all would request from her updated traffic model, because that's with our P&Z PUD approvals. So that's the one I think we should be looking at.
Good point. And with that, Harvey, you said that we have 37 PUDs within our community. Is there an exhibit that kind of shows where all of those are at, just for our information?
We do have a map that shows where most of the PUDs are. We do need to update a couple of them just because they're renamed, but we do have a map that I could show at next meeting.
If you could share that, I think we would appreciate knowing where all of those are at. That would be great. And with that, we appreciate Vice Mayor Mendoza being here. He's our council liaison, one of them. Appreciate your attendance here this evening. I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, it's my favorite motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Capolongo and a second from Vice Mayor Adam to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.